What happens when the fire is not just in the body, but in the belief system? Not just heat in the hips, not just sharp pain in the lower back, not just irritation in the sciatic pathway, but hypersensitive nerves, reduced tolerance, anger-triggered tightening in the body, rigid beliefs, dogmatism, impatience with growth, and a kind of inner heat that turns conviction into inflammation. This is where the ninth house becomes extremely revealing, because the ninth house is not only about higher knowledge, dharma, philosophy, faith, and long-range direction. In body mapping, it also governs the hips, thighs, tailbone area, sacral region, sciatic nerves, and pituitary-linked hormonal functions. So when Pitta rises here, the disturbance is not always about general heat alone. Sometimes it becomes very specific. Inflamed sacral nerves, sharp radiating pain, reactive muscular tightening, and a psychological style that becomes intense, fixed, and overheated around truth itself. That is the deeper intelligence of this slide, because Pitta is hot, sharp, penetrating, and inflammatory. And in the ninth house, that fire does not just attack tissue, it also attacks interpretation, worldview, and the way a person holds meaning. So let us begin with the neurological expression shown here. This slide highlights a very distinct pattern: nerve irritation rather than numbness, sharp radiating pain, hypersensitivity in the sacral nerves, reduced tolerance for sitting long, and anger-triggered muscle tightening. It even states the core distinction clearly: inflammation dominates rather than dryness. That matters, because this is how you differentiate Pitta from Vata in the same ninth house territory. Vata gives more irregularity, depletion, numbness, shifting pain, and unstable conduction. Pitta gives more irritation, sharpness, heat, reactivity, and hypersensitivity. So when a person says the pain shoots, the nerve feels raw, I cannot sit too long. It tightens when I get angry. It radiates sharply rather than just aching. That is not a vague lower back complaint. That is a more Pitta-dominant neurological field. The nerve is not merely undernourished. The nerve is inflamed. The muscle is not merely weak. The muscle is reactive. The body is not merely unstable. The body is provoked. That is the language of fire. Now let us reason through the planets shown in the slide, Mars and Sun. This is a very clean Pitta combination, but each of these planets contributes a different shade of intensity. Let us start with Mars. Mars governs muscles, blood, heat, dryness, inflammatory complaints, fevers, rashes, ulcers, injuries, acute reactions, and sharp force expression. Mars is the planet of provocation in the body. It inflames, accelerates, and pushes a condition into active irritation. So when Mars dominates the ninth house field, I expect sharp, radiating pain, muscular tightening, inflammatory sciatic irritation, reactive hamstrings, sacral sensitivity, and pain that intensifies with provocation rather than simply lingering passively. Mars is especially important here because this slide includes anger-triggered muscle tightening. That is a deeply Martian clue, because Mars links body heat with reaction, heat with contraction, intensity with force, emotion with muscular response. In other words, the person does not just think intensely, the body braces intensely. And once that happens in the sacral-sciatic corridor, even sitting becomes harder to tolerate. The nerve field becomes more guarded, more reactive, less forgiving. Now add Sun. Sun is also Pitta, but its fire is more central, more sovereign, more identity-based. Sun rules heat, intelligence, bones, vitality, feverish excess, overheating, and a concentrated fire principle. So if Mars gives inflammatory reaction, Sun gives burning conviction. Sun can make the person feel, I know what is right. I do not want contradiction. I do not tolerate deviation well. My sense of truth is strong, and it can become overcharged. Now look at the emotional expression on the slide. Rigid beliefs, dogmatism, moral superiority, anger over philosophical disagreement, competitive spiritual identity, and impatience with long-term growth. This is brilliant ninth house Pitta logic. Because the ninth house governs belief, philosophy, ethics, higher knowledge, and the framework through which a person interprets life. So when Pitta rises here, the fire of discernment can become the fire of judgment. Conviction becomes rigidity. Clarity becomes harshness. Standards become superiority. Purpose becomes impatience. Spiritual aspiration becomes competition. That is what happens when fire enters the house of truth without enough cooling, humility, or spaciousness. And this is why the final line in the slide is so sharp. The fire of conviction becomes inflammatory. That is not just a good phrase, it is the whole diagnosis. Because now the body and psyche are reflecting the same elemental problem. In the body, the nerves are hypersensitive, the pain radiates sharply, the muscles tighten, the sacral region reacts, and sitting tolerance drops. In the psyche, belief hardens, disagreement becomes anger-provoking, morality becomes ego-charged, and long-term growth becomes something the person wants to force rather than ripen. That is a unified Pitta pattern. Now, this is where healers and astrology students need to be disciplined. Do not simply say, Pitta in the ninth gives heat. That is too broad. Ask instead, is the nerve inflamed rather than numb? Is the pain sharp and radiating rather than shifting and empty? Is the muscle tightening in response to anger or pressure? Is the person becoming rigid in belief? Are truth and identity getting fused together? Is ambition in learning or spirituality becoming competitive or superior? Is the fire helping discernment, or is it burning relationship and perspective? That is the level of reading you want, because Pitta can be brilliant when balanced. It gives clarity, courage, precision, and the power to pursue truth. But when it overheats the ninth house, that same intelligence can become combative certainty. And that is what makes this slide different from the previous Pitta version. The previous version emphasized the physical fire in the lower body. Heat, burning, sweating, inflammatory pain. This one emphasizes the inflamed nerve and inflamed worldview. Hypersensitivity, reactivity, ideological sharpness, and conviction that becomes too heated to stay wise. That is a different teaching. So when you read this pattern, see both sides together. Mars brings reactive heat, muscular contraction, sharp radiating pain, and provoked inflammatory expression. Sun brings identity fire, certainty, intensity of principle, and the tendency to overheat the person's relationship to belief and direction. And in the ninth house, that can manifest as sacral nerve hypersensitivity, reduced sitting tolerance, sharp radiating pain, anger-linked muscular tightness, rigid beliefs, impatience with gradual growth, and a heated philosophical identity that starts producing suffering instead of insight. That is rigorous interpretation. The body says, I react sharply. The mind says, I judge sharply. The nerve says, I am irritated. The belief system says, I cannot soften. That is the real ninth house Pitta signature in this expression. And once you see that, your reading becomes much more exact. You stop confusing fire with strength. You stop confusing conviction with wisdom. You stop confusing intensity with alignment. Because sometimes what looks strong is actually inflamed, and that is the hidden lesson here. The ninth house is meant to guide a person toward higher truth. But when Pitta overheats it, the person may start defending truth instead of embodying it. That is when the fire must be understood, not glorified. If this kind of deep Jyotish Ayurveda reasoning helps you read charts with more precision, subscribe and stay with this series, because this is exactly the kind of pattern recognition healers and astrology students need to develop. And if you want a personal reading on your own chart for health patterns, soul path, relationship dynamics, or life direction, you can book a consultation through astrovagmi.com. I will see you in the next one.